Thank you. First of all, thanks for Games for Change for having us here. It was actually 4 years ago that I spoke about this idea at Games for Change, 1979 revolution, and actually creating content that's going to engage people emotionally, cognitively, through empathy, but based on real events, kind of a hybrid of GTA meets the documentary world, but based on real events. So why pushing beyond empathy? And I'll give a little bit of an intro myself, but the main thing that I want to kind of point out is that empathy is really a part of the experience you want to have and you want to kind of give to people. And so what we want to do is we want to take a look at not a slice of the pie and see how that's important, but recognize that when you make a pie, you've got to put the cherries, the sugar, all that other stuff into it, and it's actually the whole sum of it that you have to get nailed down first before you can start slicing it up. So enough with the pie analogy. I'm kind of a little hungry. Let's move on. Let's jump on. Ink Stories is a studio. We're based out of Brooklyn. We are a group of designers, storytellers, documentarian, graphic novel artists, and writers who really focus on the story dictating the medium. If it's appropriate to tell that story as a documentary, we do so. As a graphic novel, we do so. And in this particular case with 1979 Revolution, we felt the greatest impact it could have was as an interactive choose-your-own-adventure game. 1979 Revolution is about an 18-year-old young man who's on the streets of Iran leading up to the fall of the Shah and rise of the Islamic Republic of Iran. In this game, you get to make choices, about 120 choices, and your choices will actually change the ending of your own personal narrative, but it doesn't change the history. In order to kind of embed a plethora of experiences, we have over 85 areas where exploration spots. They could be political nuances, cultural nuances, religious elements, or just pop culture, like John Travolta dancing in Saturday Night Fever, which was just as big there as it was here. So all of these elements kind of create this overall experience. We also approached it as a documentary. So we went out and we did over 40 interviews. Those 40 interviews had these common themes that came about, and that helped create our narrative. And as well as we were looking at references, whether there were photos, audio recordings from that time period, or actual documentaries shot about that time, we were able to get access to that. And rather than making it as something you can look at after you've had the experience, we made it part of the experience. So you're 18 and you're a photographer. So when you take pictures, you'll see the real life pictures beside it. Without me kind of talking anymore about it, I'll show you the trailer. It should give you a nice glimpse of everything that we've done. All right, cool. So the big question, why? Am I crazy? You know, it's not that Iran jumps out in terms of like commerciability or an event that, well, nowadays it might actually, because the game just got banned 6 weeks ago in Iran. So, you know, maybe that's that. Thank you very much. Thank you. But there's something to be said about just the overall process of what we did. What was our goal? What was the challenge? Our goal was to try to tell a truthful and honest depiction, but more importantly, the bigger goal, the bigger challenge was to put people who aren't familiar with this time period, people who aren't familiar with what took place, and through putting them in the shoes of that person, being able to understand, they actually have empathy kicks in, emotions kick in, and that connection kicks in. And that's what allows us to have a much larger and a greater vision of truly having impact. And that's what we really wanted to do. So we wanted to create something that is going to entertain and engage, and through that engagement and entertainment, create a sense of emotion, empathy, cognitive connection, and then finally subtextually educate about that world so we have a greater sense of understanding and realize that it's really easy, especially now with how much information we're getting inundated, whether it's through like the little video clips on Facebook or even what's coming through the BBC this morning about what just took place in the UK, these little snippets. Do we really understand what's taking place? No, because we're getting hit with so much, we're trying to compartmentalize it and put it over here so we can digest it. This allows you, through the experience of narrative gameplay and putting you in there, to really understand, engage, and not just look at the political nuances. Look, we all know what happened with the Shah and Khomeini. The impact of it is here today. But 95, 99% of the people are the people that are just trying to survive through these moments, trying to live, trying to take care of their family. And that level of understanding, that level of connection is what you're going to get through empathy, emotion, and cognitive connection. So what I wanted to talk about was why games? Why did we decide to do a game? There's been tons of books that have been done about it. There's been tons of movies. Some like Argo, some didn't. There's documentaries certainly that have been made about this event. It's been covered in depth. But what all of these experiences do is they tell the story that a creator has made, that is giving you. They're storytellers saying, this is what happened, and here's my opinion of what took place. But what a game does is it allows you to have a narrative within that story. It's not a one-way projection in which you're digesting it and you're saying, oh, I understand that. And most likely, in a few days, it's gone. It's up there, but it's in another shelf. But actual interactive, narrative engagement stays with you. It sticks with you. You'll have a conversation about it. And we've seen that in all the threads in regards to our game. We're seeing conversations take place that are mind-boggling, like religious conversations between Mormons out of Utah and Muslims out of Iran, but not talking about good or bad, but talking about the essence of spirituality and what they have actually in common with one another. We're seeing so many conversations take place in the traditional, we got covered in Fox. All you see is hate, 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 hate. And then the next thing you know, you actually seeing Fox people who are like enjoying it, coming back and arguing back and forth, saying, you're not understanding the complexity of what's taking place. We're starting a conversation, and that's coming from one reason and one reason only. It's because you're giving the person who's interested in this information the ability to interact within the story and not have it just being preached to them or given to them in an entertaining fashion. And of course, now we got VR coming. And VR is going to be even more engaging, but that in itself isn't necessarily a slam dunk. What we're seeing is people are engaged with the fact that they're absorbed in that world, they're looking around in 360, and they're having, empathy almost kind of thrown onto them. You should feel bad because we're in Liberia and we're seeing the impact of Ebola. That's still one way. And in my opinion, in the next 3 months, the next 6 months, that's going to get really, really, really tired. And as we've seen with audiences and their sophistication, they're going to want something more. And what that more is going to be is narrative, for me to be able to engage with it. And I'll show you a slide at the end of what we're doing by bringing 79 into VR and what we've kind of focused on. So here is really the crutch of what I wanted to talk to you guys about and the focus that we have in terms of emotions and empathy. Now, look, if I go see a great film, it's kind of sad, the performances are stellar, that's an emotional connection. I can feel that emotion that they're able to portray. And that's just part of this experience. Then you've got the other element of it, that how does, what do I do in regards with this empathy element that's coming in? So I've felt the emotion, and with the environment and the world that I'm in, empathy starts kicking in. I'm starting to realize what's taking place here. but it's cognitive empathy, the ability to actually be in the shoes of that person, which is the slam dunk of the experience. Only by being in that and only by recognizing can you start having compassion and understand the complexity and not be about black and white in terms of how decisions are made, but actually take a look at the gray that exists. And that's what also makes the challenge for games. Because games are still about trying to figure things out. Whether it's a strategy game or puzzle game, you're trying to figure out how to get to that end goal. And if you don't have something that's black and white and that's gray, A, it puts it on you to have your own narrative, but B, it allows you to kind of try to figure it out. So it's not so easy. And the best part is there are no right or wrong answers because it's your experience, it's your own narrative, and that's what leads to a larger discussion. And this is kind of the pie that we've kind of put together, which is all of these things, the red one you can't read, but it says emotion. But all of these circles are kind of work together, and they depend on one another. But truly, that part in the middle, that's the special sauce, and that's the part that if you can nail down these three elements of emotion, of choice being so important, the ability to give people the choice of what am I going to do, what do I want to do, and we've seen it in a lot of games. It's when people look at Grand Theft Auto, for example, one of the projects I got to work on, there's choice in there. Everybody leans towards the violent element of what that game has, but the fact is there's choice. You can jump in a car and you can just drive around. You can go to the clothing store. You can go work out. You can go to the fast food place. And when I was in Iran and kids were coming up to me talking about the game, they weren't talking about the violence. They were actually talking about what a great place the U.S. must be because you could drive around and you have all these choices and you could do these things and no one's on you. There's no social police. There's no comité. And that's when really this whole revolution for me kind of started, which was I saw the impact that people were having from this engagement. So all three of these are important. If you just do one, it's not going to work. You'll get halfway there, but you need to bring all of these experiences together. Emotion through performances, through real people's experiences, through real people's stories, combined with the fact that you give them choices so they actually start feeling the importance, the gravity of where they're at. Finally, combined with that cognitive empathy is now you're in the shoes of an Iranian, 18 years old, something that you would have felt was so foreign. Now you're actually a part of it and living it. Now I'm talking fast, right? I haven't even had coffee yet. So what are the pitfalls? Woo, lots of pitfalls. But the biggest pitfall is how do you kind of, in that same circle that I saw, how do you create this marriage between design, between being truthful to the story that you want to tell, portraying it honestly, making sure that it's entertaining, making sure that it's engaging. And the bigger challenge that we found as a studio was that everybody had like their own personal interests that represented these different departments. And so the job of myself and Bessie, my partner, was to really kind of hone in what's the best elements of this that's going to create the final experience that's really going to resonate with people. So we definitely had a few stumbles, but what we realized was that when we did the interviews as a documentary style with the people that were in Iran on a huge spectrum, you know, religiously, culturally, politically, the issues and the hurdles that they had were very much in common. It had nothing to do with their political or their cultural affiliation. It had to do with their day-to-day struggles. It was dealing with their mom and dad who thought you shouldn't be out on the street, their mother and father saying, you know, we're making a good living, we're middle class, and what you're fighting for could actually take that away from us, and the kids not understanding it. Having your brother in the army while you're out there in the streets kind of tear it up, and you're tearing it up on the streets, not maybe because even you're politically inclined to, but because all your friends are there and you want to it's the summertime and you want to have fun and it's exciting. And then finally the trajectory when that revolution goes from being hopeful, peaceful, to that next step where it starts becoming chaotic, and then how are you going to navigate it, and how some of the choices you make in 1978 come to haunt you when you're arrested and in Evin prison in 1980. So really bringing that impact to light. I think it's also easy for us in this room. We're like-minded individuals. We have similar kind of goals. We're at this conference. For us to also watch out that we don't fall into this echo chamber. It's really important for all the things that you're hearing about games or all the messages that you're hearing, that you become advocates for it outside of this room, outside in circles that normally don't discuss this, because only by having this kind of content embraced by people who might not think of themselves as gamers, might not give a shit about social impact, because they don't even know what that means, or they don't care about it, they've got other issues, but that you can bring them into this experience by saying, I'm going to talk to other people about it, and that's how it starts. And that conversation starts becoming bigger and bigger. And what we do in the process is validate what we're calling verite games and what we're calling social impact and experiences to become not just mainstream, but actually define it as a genre that's just as valid as any other genre of gaming. And the one thing I just wanted to kind of add was that the rewards that we've received don't necessarily have to come financially. I mean, it's important so that we could live to see another day and make another version of a game, do another historical moment, build the engine out so we can share it with other people. But the rewards are the comments that are coming on the threads from the people that are experiencing, how they go from being unfamiliar with the content to becoming the voice of spreading these kind of, the empathy, the emotion, the cognitive experiences with other people, because that's what's resonating with them. And we've been very, very fortunate. The game came out in April 5th on Steam. It just came out on iOS last week. The reviews have been phenomenal. So we've been embraced by the gaming community. We've been embraced by the mainstream reviewers, and we're now trying to have that impact across the board. And what we're learning is that each one of these is its own group. So you kind of have to make sure that you position yourself with your messaging to each one of these groups. But the one thing that remains consistent, that resonates with gamers, that resonates with mainstream, that resonates with historians, that resonates with technologists, was the emotion, the empathy. And that is just something that's universal. It's existed since the dawn of storytelling. And that's what we really jumped on. But what we've jumped on is to realize that it's just not about emotion that you can connect with, but all the other elements of the circles that I talked about. Finally, 1979 is coming to VR. We were fortunate enough to get some help from Made in New York and IFP. And what we wanted to do in this experience was to start creating a VR experience that goes back and forth. So you're in the room, and rather than looking around and going, oh, wow, this is really creepy and this is really kind of scary and this guy's really intimidating to me, what turns around is that we have this person asking us questions, and we've coded it now into the headgear that when they ask you a question, you can nod yes and you can nod no, and that starts creating a branching. And then through looking at different pieces on the table as you're being accused or as you're being asked to help someone who's next to you for a confession, your eyes actually, as they register certain hotspots, will give your internal voice the trigger to kind of come about. And I think that is also the next step for VR in terms of trying to have some kind of contact, is that emotion, that empathy is going to come again if the narrative isn't being told from the creators, but is creating the bed for us to be able to kind of jump into and really experience and own the narrative. And that's it for 1979 Revolution. Check it out. It's on iOS, and it's on Steam sale, 50% off just the next 9 days, because it went on sale yesterday. Thank you.